Hi there, we're back. Oliver's behaving. Colin has left us. He's off on some kind of excursion. And we have Doug with us from Langley, BC. Hi, Doug. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Annie. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm glad you got up a couple extra hours for us because there is a 2-hour time difference. And it is just like first cup of coffee time for you, so to speak. So we're very glad to have you here. Oh, interesting. Some cards fell out, so I'm going to leave them out. Now, Doug, we've done this on the phone together before, so I would like you to perhaps tell me when to quit shuffling would be great.
Okay. Now.
Okay. And next we're going to go ahead and cut them twice. I'll start running my hands up and down the deck now.
Okay.
And again?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Much more decisive on your future than your past, okay? But I think that's most of us are like that. There's always some things we don't want to look backwards on, and that's perfectly fine. But it is showing here that we have a very bright future pile, so I'm very happy to see that. So go ahead and ask me your question.
Okay. In a few months, I'm going to retire, and I'm just getting all my ducks in a row right now.
Okay.
And it all looks pretty good, but I'm still wondering about my finances after I retire. I'm just wondering if it's going to be enough to allow me to have an enjoyable, sustainable life after retirement.
Well, for sure you can, but we're not going to be flying off to Greece every, 6 months or anything. But if we want to take off on a short trip here and there, absolutely. If we want to take the odd trip to Florida, absolutely. Now, the other thing that's showing up, though, is it's not so much the finances that are a worry, Doug. It's, are you going to really miss work? And what are you going to do to fill your time?
Yeah, well, we have lots of plans and lots of little excursions to do, so I think I'll be pretty busy. But
Perfect. Yeah, and it is actually showing that here, and it's showing that we're going to be spending some real quality time with our family as well. Okay, so that feels really good. And it also feels like we're going to be going into some creative stuff. But as far as finances go, we're going to pull a few more cards on that. Actually, I think you'd be surprised. Have you actually got into a financial advisor? I think between your home and the equity built up in it and what its value is now compared to when you first purchased it, I think between that and your actual investments in your company pension, I think you actually will live quite comfortably. Okay, you certainly won't live with a silver spoon in our mouth, but you will not have to, count your pennies either. Okay.
Right. Good.
Yeah, so I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. I am going to bring this up if that's all right. It is actually somebody that's coming through for you that's passed away, a family member who, yes, passed, before her time, is coming through and showing you clarity in the paperwork. When you see this on YouTube, you'll know what I'm pointing at and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? But it is showing here the card that represents somebody who's passed away, showing us that where our paperwork's concerned, it's actually quite cleansing, quite clarifying, okay? So as far as you retiring in the fall, I don't see any major hiccups there because it does feel like we qualify for a pretty decent company pension as well. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you going to, I have to ask this, are you still going to get really, really good deals on traveling once you're retired?
Yeah.
Okay, see,
Yeah.
much easier for you to travel to when you retire than I, unless I win the lottery. Okay, because I did smell airplane fuel there for a second. So it does kind of show that as far as your flights and stuff like that goes, you do kind of have an advantage at retirement compared to some of us. So that's actually kind of good. And it is showing here that we do have some really good quality time coming up with family, perhaps time that we don't always get time to spend with them when we're working full time, right? So, yeah, and it also definitely shows here that, family is quite on board with things, if that makes sense as well. Okay? So let's keep that in mind, Doug. Does that help at all?
Oh, it certainly does. Annie.
Okay, thank you. And you enjoy the day, okay?
I will do.
Yeah, and at some point, you guys can fly east, just saying.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, okay, you betcha. We'll talk to you again.
Great.
Thanks,
Annie.
Doug. You betcha. Bye-bye. So that was Doug with us from Langley, BC. His partner's actually she just moved from Dryden not very long ago, and she's kind of special in my heart. And by association, I guess Doug has become that way too, because they're both pretty cool people. Okay, we have some questions here by email, and I'm going to go ahead. And this is Roy from Brandon. Is my financial situation going to improve, or am I going to always going to have money problems? I have a job offer. Should I take it? Okay. So it definitely feels like we're already working. Hard work is definitely not the issue. You have no problems with work. And it does feel like you kind of sweat while you're doing it. So let's have a peek at that and see what we can do. Oh, Roy, this is interesting. Maybe not so interesting, so much as a heads up. Some chaos coming up for your partner, so let's kind of keep an eye on that a little bit. But definitely some chaos coming up for your partner. But because that's not our question, it's not really showing us what that is about. But let's maybe caution her to watch her steps down, okay? Watch the steps down from the kitchen, watch the steps down, okay? Yeah, something there with depth perhaps, but let's just keep an eye on that if we could. Okay, I have a feeling family is encouraging you to take this. So does this mean perhaps a little more income coming into the family? Seems like it does. Seems like we also have some extra expenditure coming out with perhaps some kids' sports or extracurricular activities. Looks like one of our kids here is going to be into some kind of program that she wants to get into, but it seems to be a little more expensive of a summer camp than perhaps others. But I do think it would be very beneficial for her and her future. However, I know that's not your question, but it is asking about money, and that did say that it's going to cost us a little extra money. I think as far as your wife goes, it feels like she's kind of pushing you to perhaps take the job offer, but it feels to me like it's a very tough decision for you. So in other words, Roy, is this going to take you away from home perhaps? Or is it going to make you travel back and forth somewhere? Money definitely feels like it would be better taking the position, but I also kind of feel that you get your guaranteed hours where you are now and keeps you home. And that seems to be the key here, is keeping you home. So the question is, are you worried that your family's not going to be okay for those perhaps 2 or 3 weeks out and week in? I think we'll be perfectly fine. And I do tend to think that that job offer, any questions that you have with it, I would actually give them a call and start asking it. You know, it's not just that they're buying you, you're buying them too for a long-term position, right? So it's not just the employer that has to be sure that this is what we want, the employee does too. But it certainly does seem here that, first of all, you'll get to use a little bit more of your creativity, or perhaps speak a little more about what you're thinking, perhaps some more responsibilities. But it certainly does show here signing new papers for employee files, okay? So if it's not this job or offer, if you're applying for something else, I think we're going to see an actual job offer come again. But one feels like we're moving quite far away with the whole family. The other job offer, however, seems to come where just you're going back and forth. Quite frankly, I do think we can get help at home if needed to do this, where it perhaps isn't coming out of your budget. So talk to your wife about this. Talk to the employer who's offered you the position, because I think financially it would be very good. Even if we only do it for a few years, because it does feel like that would get very tiring. But I also feel that there is an opportunity for all of you perhaps to move west. And we're going west. And you know, sometimes when we think west, we assume Alberta or we assume BC, because for whatever reason, nobody thinks really of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. But I'm kind of picking up on Saskatchewan here. And if it's the Alberta, then I would think very close to the Saskatchewan-Alberta border, but I'm seeing more of the stubble that to me represents Saskatchewan. So don't rule out looking in different places. Heck, maybe something even in Ontario, because where were you from? You are from Brandon. So, but scope it out. You have many job offers coming up for almost whatever you apply for. So in other words, you must be very skilled at what you do. So Roy, I hope that answers your question. Yes, your money will get better. But I do tend to think it means leaving to a different position. However, that being said, those different positions seems to take us out of Brandon. So, but the money is definitely better. So I am going to wrap this question up, and I'm going to thank you very much, Roy, for sending it in. You see, guys, there's a lot of men who ask us questions or ask me questions. But they do tend to be a little more private than the women in our lives do, as far as being shy of what I do. But, you know, it's not one of those sports that is specific to men or women. So by all means, send in your questions. We can always look at answering them. How am I doing for time? Okay. Apparently we're going to take a very short break, which kind of works because I think I need to take a little sip of water or coffee. So we will be right back. My puppy is behaving and snoozing under the table, and we will be back with you shortly.